Welcome to The Coalition. This is a talk show dedicated to discussing health, wellness, and inspiration. I'm your host, Dr. Shani Belgrave. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Coalition. I'm your host, Dr. Shani Belgrave. I am a bariatric and minimally invasive surgeon in Atlanta, Georgia. You can learn more about me and get connected at www.drshanibelgrave.com. I am excited to welcome to the show today Dr. Maiysha Clairborne. Dr. Maiysha Clairborne is a mindset coach and hypnotherapist that joins the show today to tell us what we need to know about achieving and maintaining a healthy mindset. Dr. Maiysha Clairborne, thank you so much for joining the coalition.
Hi, Dr. Shani. It's so good to be here, and I very much appreciate you having me on the show.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I think that mindset is so critical. One of my favorite quotes is the possession of anything begins in the mind. And so
Mm.
I am so glad that you are here to give us some key information on how we can achieve and maintain a healthy mindset. So please, Dr. Maiysha, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Of course. Thank you. So I am a family doctor by training. That's what I trained to be. I'm a family doc. And one of the reasons that I chose family medicine is because it allows me to interface with patients, or it allowed me to. I'm no longer practicing, and I'll move into how that happened momentarily. But it allows me to um, interact with patients of all ages, and it allows me to interact and with the patients from the root cause, like interact with the root cause. So as a family doctor, I've always sort of been off the beaten path. I always believed in getting to the root of disease, getting to the root of why we do the things we do. I am a psychology undergraduate major, so I love all things brain and behavior. And so a lot of what I do now, and I was backstage was talking to you, Dr. Shani, about how I got into coaching, is when I was in clinical practice, I worked with patients to help to get underneath what are some of the limiting beliefs that had them think they couldn't live healthy lives. What were some of the limiting beliefs that had them think they couldn't change their eating or couldn't infuse exercise into their daily life? Help them to see different ways to look at healthy eating and different ways to look at exercise and movement. So essentially, a lot of what I love being a family doc and being an integrative medicine doc, that is the marriage between the holistic approach and the Western approach, is that I really got to empower patients. And that's what I do. I empower people, and I am out of clinical medicine. So a lot of what I do is speaking and empowering people from a different place. But I still love to empower people to be at the source of their lives, to be at the source of their decision making, because there's so much noise in the world, and there's so much noise about we can't, who we are and who we are not, what we can and cannot do, that I like to teach people how they can cut to the root of that and really rely on their community and their own mind to be able to make healthy choices in their lives.
Absolutely. The show is all things health, wellness, and inspiration. And the goal is to help people feel empowered.
Mhm.
So I love that that's one of the focal points of what you are doing. Can you explain what is a limiting belief and what are some of those limiting beliefs that are out there?
Well, so whenever we come to believe anything, there's a process. And
Mm,
oftentimes we have these beliefs about the world and we have these beliefs about people, but we also have beliefs about ourselves. We
mhm.
have beliefs about our capabilities, we have beliefs about our intelligence, we have all these types of beliefs. But these beliefs didn't just pop up. We weren't born with these beliefs, right? Someone had to suggest to us that we could or could not do something. So a limiting belief is a belief that we might have about ourselves, about someone else, about the world, about society, about our capabilities, about who we can trust, who supports us, that may not be true. That is limited by our own background or upbringing, our own mental filters that get installed as we grow up. So we inherit and we inherit a lot of our beliefs from our family members, our caretakers, the educational system. I mean, social media is creating a whole bunch of beliefs in people. And so the limiting belief limits us from being able to act in our full potential or act in our best selves. It limits our capacity because we're limiting ourselves in what we believe to be true or that we can do.
So, how can people take these limiting beliefs apart and get rid of them?
Well, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge. You have to recognize and and be willing to self-reflect.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, when we recognize limiting belief, we want to just immediately get rid of it. But that's sort of like putting a band-aid on it, trying to squash something that, let's say if you're in a windstorm without an umbrella, right? You're getting hit by the rain, and then maybe you put up an umbrella, it doesn't stop the rain.
Mm.
Okay. So if you can do whatever you need to do to try to like against the resistance, get rid of the belief, but if you don't tackle the root of the belief, then it doesn't go away. So we want to acknowledge that we have limiting beliefs, start to reflect on what those are, right? And then begin to look at when did that belief form? When did that belief actually form? And what you often find is that perhaps you acquired a belief at a very young age, and you know what we believe and what we tend to believe as 5-year-olds or as 10-year-olds. Our 10-year-old brains see things very differently from say our 30-year-old brains, our 40-year-old brains, our 50-year-old brains. So when we can go back and look at what the circumstances are of 10 years old, we can look at how that belief came to be and often find it's not even true. And that's how you start to dismantle beliefs at their root, is recognizing where the belief comes from, look at the circumstances, and look at where is the belief true given the circumstances actually. Now, sometimes you do need the assistance of someone to help you see that because sometimes we're so rooted in that belief, it becomes our whole identity. And it can be very difficult to let go of a belief that is a part of our identity because it gets scary to if you let go of a belief that's part of your identity, then you begin to wonder, well, who am I?
Who am I really? That's deep.
Mhm, mhm.
That's a good question. Do you suggest that people ask themselves that question? Who am I?
You know, do I suggest? I think it's always good to check in.
Mhm.
Um, that's sometimes a scary question for people to ask. And then people get kind of frustrated if they don't know. I think that what's more useful is to ask people that you trust, people who tend to empower you to reflect what they see about who you are and compare it against what you see. And that helps you to begin to see, like, a lot of times the world sees us very differently than we see ourselves. So, for example, I might see myself as, just a regular coach, a regular speaker. But then I was on the phone with someone who was like, "Oh, I saw your TEDx talk and I feel like I'm meeting with a rock star." And I was like, "What? What? Little old me?" Like it's a way that sometimes people reflect to you who you are that you wouldn't actually describe yourself as. And
Mhm.
so, in my mind and in your mind as a listener, we tend to cycle thoughts and beliefs that are of a much less caliber than other people tend to have about us, the people who are for us, who are empowering us, who are our mentors, who are our family members who are like, you can do us, who are rooting for us out there. So, yes, you can ask yourself, who am I? Because at the core of you, you know who you aspire to be,
Mhm.
and you know what your core values are, right? And maybe that's the better question. What is important to me? What is important to me? What are my core values?
I love that because that's an easier thing
Mhm.
to figure out. Because I think most people know what's important to them.
Right.
So I think that's a great starting point. Thank you so much. Please give us some
Mhm.
information on hypnosis as therapy. So let me start the conversation by saying this. I was at a women's wellness empowerment event, which was beautiful. And there was a woman who got up and spoke about hypnotherapy. And someone that was in the audience gave a testimony that her mother had been a decades long smoker and she
Mhm.
had worked with this person with hypnosis and put the cigarettes down. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And so when I started encountering people that were struggling with smoking, I was like, oh, you got to look into this. And I was immediately met with, I feel like I feel like there was this trepidation or concern that someone might be getting into your brain and messing with your brain. So please, what from someone that does it,
Mhm.
how does hypnosis work and what are some misconceptions about hypnosis?
Absolutely. And I want to start by saying that it is so understandable that people would be like, right?
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that. And if you think about certain demographics of people who are like, "Oh, you never get, like the system of healthcare has done some very harmful things to patients of different backgrounds, and we know that. So I start with that because that comes, that's not like out of the blue. That comes from somewhere. So I just want for people who are like, just to kind of give you a sense
To
of,
acknowledge
yeah,
that. But my question
acknowledge that.
is, I think sometimes people think of when they hear the word hypnosis, they think of bark like a dog,
Oh
hop on
yeah.
one foot. So is
Yeah.
that false?
Absolutely, it's false. Absolute. Well, it's false. Okay, so I wanted to acknowledge that. So I'm gonna come back around and talk about what hypnosis is, and then
Mhm.
I'm gonna address this. So I'm gonna take a detour to answer your question. Okay.
Okay.
So, but I do want to acknowledge that because I think it's very important for people to get that aspect of it. Um, Hypnosis is just the state of being in trance, and we have all been in trance before. All right. So if you're listening to this, this podcast, and you have gotten so into, say, of listening to music or listening to a show that someone calls your name and you don't hear, that's trance. If you have ever been driving down the road and gotten so deep in thought that you were on autopilot, and maybe you even like went somewhere, you were on autopilot going home, but you weren't supposed to be going home, that's trance. You were in trance, you were in thought, you were on autopilot. Or if you got so you were on a highway and you got so in deep in thought that you missed your turn, like that's trance. People who get into exercise, who are running or who are doing any type of exercise and they get into the zone, you've heard of people getting into the zone, that is a form of trance. So it's just this like deep state of concentration. That's what trance is a deep state of concentration. And when you're in that deep state of concentration, your the noise gets sort of shut out, but you actually have a heightened awareness. But what that allows, it allows for access to the unconscious mind, which, depending on where you are in trance, could be a good thing or it could be a not so great thing. So people are nervous about being in trance, but when you watch television, you have to be mindful of what you're watching, because if you're getting in a zone and there are messages there, then you want to be mindful of that. So what a hypnotherapist does is, and I specifically say hypnotherapist, not a hypnotist, because there's a little fine distinction there. But what a hypnotherapist does is they assist you in getting rid of bad habits or habitual thoughts, or reframing and empowering the mind, getting rid of fears and anxieties, things that you want to get rid of through positive suggestion. So,
Mm.
an example, and a very personal example, is my son. My son is 10. He is getting ready to run for student council president. So we're driving in the car, and he says, "Mommy, I really wish I didn't have to do a speech in front of a whole bunch of people today." And I said, "Oh, you're getting nervous, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm getting a little nervous." So my son knows that I do hypnosis. It's a long-standing thing, and we've done hypnosis to help him sleep. We've done hypnosis to help him not be nervous for the first day of school after COVID because he was a
Mm.
COVID kindergartner. And he now regularly requests hypnosis. And so, and he can actually induce trance in himself to go to sleep now. So he'll be 11. That just gives you a sense of the safety of it, right? So I plan to do a little hypnosis with him to help him his anxiety, to help his boost his confidence. So when he goes on stage, that he can deliver his talk and feel good about it, right? So with positive suggestions, you redirect the emotion, you redirect the mind to help a person be their best selves or to release a negative habit. So, yes, I have done smoking cessation. I have done a lot of insomnia. I actually helped a person whose husband was snoring, so she couldn't sleep, and so I did a hypnosis where I helped her to. I installed like a little bit of a we call it a volume control. So I gave her a suggestion where she can, when she goes to sleep, turn the volume down on her husband snoring in her brain.
I need to call you. I need that one.
Right. I've helped with people with cravings to help get rid of certain cravings for food. And of course, I do help with different belief systems and when a person has a negative belief about themselves to help to be able to navigate that. So public speaking, I helped she's now actually a TEDx organizer. She just had her TEDx or event that she sponsored last week. But before that, she spoke on the TEDx stage. And the week before, I guided her through a hypnosis session that helped her to visualize the successful completion of her TEDx talk. And she was able to do that. And she came back, she was like, "Oh, what you did, but it happened exactly the way the way we created it." And the thing with hypnosis is that with a great hypnotherapist, you create your positive suggestions together so that it lives in your mind the way you actually want it to live.
That is amazing. So, first of all, what are some things that people can do on their own as it relates to hypnotherapy? Some
Yeah.
exercises.
Yes. So, well, before I do that, I do wanna address one of your questions with the myths and the
Yes, please.
misconceptions. Yes, I don't wanna forget about that because I know there are still some people who are like, "Yeah, that sounds good, but, not me." Which is just fine. The sister who I did the TEDx speaker, she when we first started working together as mentor and mentee, she was like, "I don't know about this hypnosis stuff."
Mhm,
But by the time, we got to that week before, she was like, "You know what? I want to try it."
mhm,
So the first thing that I think is important is that it requires trust between the person who's the hypnotherapist and the person who's receiving hypnotherapy. It requires trust. And so whether you're into it or not, if you're curious about it, you want to make sure it's someone that you feel that you would trust being vulnerable with. All
mhm.
right. The second thing is just in terms of myths. If you've seen Jordan Peele's Get Out, there is no sunken place, and we don't do the teacup thing. We don't tap the teacup. It's not a thing that we do. So that is something I always tell clients and those who have seen that movie. I think I usually get a little bit of a chuckle. So those who are listening, there's no sunken place. There's no sunken place. Um, the third thing is that there is a difference between performance or stage hypnosis
Mhm.
and hypnotherapy,
Okay.
right? So, stage hypnosis is where people see this whole, bark like a dog, cluck like a chicken, speak in a different language, speak like an alien, get up and dance around type of thing. And that is stage hypnosis that is curated specifically for those things. And the people who go up on stage are the people who would probably normally do that disinhibited with a couple of drinks. Okay. So there are different levels to hypnosis, and those people who tend to uh, become disinhibited more easily are more likely to go deeper in a situation like that, and they may be called up to the stage, and then they will do those things. All right. But in a hypnotherapy session, that no such thing. All right. We're focused on um, positive suggestions, empowering the mind, expanding capacity, and releasing negative emotion, releasing negative beliefs about oneself and one's capacity. That's what we focus on. Right. So I just want to like make sure that I make that distinction. And then the final thing I'll say about misconceptions is that we do hypnosis to people. This is a do with process. What that means is I can't hypnotize you if you're not a willing participant because it requires that you follow instructions. So if I say sit back and relax and then you're up here, we're like sitting straight forward, or if I say close your eyes and you keep your eyes open wide, then you it's not gonna work because number one, there's obviously not enough trust between you and the therapist for you to just do the thing. But also it requires that you follow instructions.
Mhm.
So when I used to do hypnosis with my son to go to sleep, when he would have a nightmare, he'd wake up and he have a nightmare, and I'd say, okay, well, I need you to um, visualize what it is that you want to dream about. And then I take him through a sequence of relaxation. And every now and then, and I'd say, you close your eyes. And every now and then he'd be just like, open his eyes real wide. And I'd say, Telson, if you want this to work, you have to actually follow the instructions. So it really is
I
that way.
want to go to sleep.
Right. So it really is that way. So now to come back around to your question, how is it that we can do this with ourselves? Right. Hypnosis, and now there are a lot of different apps out there that you can assist yourself into deep meditation. So meditation is a form of very light trance. So one of the ways that I recommend for people to start if they want to do a little self-hypnosis is to begin with meditation. And what I recommend is you begin with a guided meditation because you have to have something to focus on. And
Mhm.
when you have a guided meditation, you're focusing on the person's voice
Mm.
and the instructions that they're giving. Right. So that's one of the things I recommend. There's Calm and there's a bunch of different mindset apps out there that you can use. The other thing you can do is if you have a clock in the house that has a second hand, and I know these things are few and far between. I'm Generation X, so but I just happen to have a grandfather clock that ticks. You can actually sit and focus on the ticking sound. And as you focus on the ticking sound, let it relax you. So there could be any kind of sound. It could be if you have an app with a gray noise. Um, I have a meditation app that has a setting for Om, so it's like a chanting setting.
Mhm.
And so every time the chant starts, then I just let myself get twice as relaxed, and that can help assist you to the deeper you are relaxed, the more you can go into self hypnosis. And then if you know what it is that you want to either release or you want to empower, have that as a sort of a chant in your mind. And it's I release rather than I don't want to feel.
Mm.
Because the way our brain works, it doesn't process negatives. So in order for you to if you say, "Well, I don't wanna feel," or, "Yeah, if I don't wanna feel I don't wanna feel," or even releasing, you say what you what you want rather than what you don't want, right? So if you say, "Well, I don't wanna feel scared," the brain processes scared. So then it keeps you in that state. But if you want to feel calm, you say, well, okay, calm and confident.
Mm.
I'm calm and confident. I'm calm and confident. Right. And then what happens is your body starts to actually adjust to that. Take you to a time maybe where you felt calm and confident. As a reminder. So that's one of the ways that you can begin to practice. But it really does start with like meditation. It doesn't have to be an hour. It could be like 10 minutes. It could be 5 minutes. People's like, "Oh, I can't meditate." Everybody can meditate.
Everybody can meditate. My next question is, how frequently do you need to do this to get it to work, and how long? Is this a lifelong thing, or how frequently and how long do you need to do it to get the benefit?
Meditate or hypnosis?
Both.
Oh, meditate lifelong, yes. So for meditation, if you can, even if you could just do it 3 times a week, that's great.
Okay.
Fine. But if you could find 5 minutes a day to sit in quiet, in stillness, and maybe with a chant, or if it's a prayer for those who prefer prayer. So if there's a prayer that you know, some people use a serenity prayer. I would recommend that. Just chanting the prayer over and over. Set your watch for 5 minutes. When you got 5 minutes easily, you'd be surprised how fast it goes. Set it to 10 minutes. When you got 10 minutes easily, set it to 15. When you have 15 minutes, sustain that for 30 to 60 days until you find a structure where you can make it longer, whether it's first thing in the morning or last thing before you go to bed. So that's I feel like that's a lifetime practice. And if you fall off the horse, then just get back on.
I love that. Just get back on. And what about the hypnotherapy? How long do you have to do that to notice a benefit?
As little as once. And generally speaking, it depends on what you're navigating. So if it's smoking cessation, I typically do 3 sessions with a client. First session is usually intake and kind of getting what the triggers are for wanting to smoke. So it's informational. Second session is typically some light trance work, but they're like some remapping work. And then the third is the hypnosis session. And then I record it and give it to the person, and they can listen to it whenever they want to, really. But it really only takes minimum, one hypnosis session.
So, with smoking cessation, what's the soonest that you've seen someone and be able to quit smoking? 3 sessions?
Oh, yeah, after the hypnosis session, pretty much immediately.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to get rid of your paraphernalia. And that's a requirement because, you could choose to pick up a cigarette and smoke anytime you want to,
Right.
right? It's not that they can't do it because we have free will.
Right.
It's that the desire goes away.
Yes, I love that.
And then they find something else to do instead that's healthier.
Something healthy. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So, can people use their HSA for some of these services?
Yeah, absolutely. For the hypnosis, HSA does well, you have to make sure your HSA covers it. But yeah, I've definitely used HSA with my clients.
Okay. And what about insurance? Does any insurance cover any of these things?
Well, I believe that there are some insurance companies that are providers that do cover hypnosis. And you just have to check with your provider. Now, I personally don't take insurance, and most hypnotherapists that you will work with probably will not as well. And if you happen to have a physician who is a hypnotherapist, they might be able to code it and do it. But because it's just so tricky with who covers what and how many sessions, it's better to use HSA. It's much easier to use HSA. So when I was in my clinic, that's primarily what I would recommend for people is I would always ask, do you have a flexible spending if you're, employed. Some people do flexible spendings, or do you have an HSA? And most people would use their HSA or their flexible spending accounts.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Maiysha. This has been very informative. What is the best way for people to reach out to you that want to connect with you?
Well, I am on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to facebook.com/ Dr. Maiysha. Also, LinkedIn / Dr. Maiysha, and on YouTube. And then I would say everything is / Dr. Maiysha, by the way. And then I would recommend, if you want to learn a little bit more about this, what I do is to go to the podcast Behind Beliefs, Behavior, and the Brain and take a quick listen. Yeah.
It's a fantastic podcast. Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I guess the website is mindremappingacademy.com. Mindremappingacademy.com. And there you can learn more about the hypnosis that I do and the types of things that it works with and the types of other types of services and coaching that I do as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Maiysha. You are welcome to come back to the coalition anytime.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to another impactful episode of the Coalition. I'm your host, Dr. Shani Belgrave. I am a bariatric and minimally invasive surgeon in Atlanta, Georgia. You can get connected with me at www.drshanibelgrave.com. Very special thank you to Dr. Maiysha. She does hypnotherapy, she does mind remapping, mindset coaching, and she's a phenomenal resource. Definitely get connected with Dr. Maiysha on social media or on her website. Thanks everybody for watching. Make sure that you share this episode with friends and family so that we can all work towards becoming the best versions of ourselves. I'll see y'all next time.